From possible dirty bombs to superpower showdowns to guns in schools, the where, why, and how the world is becoming a more dangerous place. Tonight on Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. Sometimes it seems the entire world is a danger zone. From carnage in our classrooms to dirty bomb fears just south of our border, to chemical weapons in Syria and growing tensions with China. And those are just today's headlines. Throw in jihadists in the Middle East and protesters in Ukraine, and you have an explosive situation almost everywhere you look. We have Fox team coverage tonight. James Rosen on rising tensions with China over disputed territory. Catherine Herridge on U.S. negotiations directly with Middle East terror groups. But we begin with correspondent Casey Stiegel in Dallas following the search for radioactive material that could be used to make a dirty bomb. Hello, Casey.
Brett, good evening to you. It is theft that has officials on high alert tonight after a truck loaded with radioactive material was stolen from a Mexico gas station earlier this week. The vehicle had left a hospital in Tijuana where it picked up a load of cobalt-60, which is used to treat cancer patients. But cobalt added to traditional explosives can make a so-called dirty bomb, causing widespread panic and radiation exposure. Now, that medical cargo is being driven to a special nuclear storage facility more than 1,700 miles away. Deep in Mexico's interior is where it was stolen, in the small town of Tepeyaco near Mexico City. There you see on the map. Well, today the National Commission of Nuclear Security and Safeguards released these photos. And according to that agency, this one shows the white container housing the dangerous chemical. This one shows the wooden crate lined with steel that was placed over the container to shield it. And experts say if this cobalt-60 gets into the wrong hands, there could be catastrophic consequences, intentional or unintentional.
The International Atomic Energy Agency characterizes materials on a scale from 1 to 2, 3, 4, and so on, in terms of how dangerous it is to human health if it ends up going out of normal channels. And this is at the top end of the danger to human health.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security released this statement to Fox News today. It says, quote, all ports of entry are equipped with radiation detection equipment. DHS, in coordination with our federal partners, will continue to closely monitor this situation and remains in close communication with Mexican officials. Now, officials at the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the UN's nuclear watchdog group, are also involved in this investigation, and they say there are more than 100 incidents of theft regarding radioactive materials reported to their agency every single year. Brett?
Casey Stiegel live in Dallas. Casey, thank you. The UN also involved in another case, saying there is growing evidence that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and senior officials have been involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity. The complex dynamics in Syria have the U.S. trying to talk peace with what is literally the lesser of two evils. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here with that story. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Brett. The National Security Council staff and the intelligence agencies are referring all questions about the U.S. government's contacts with Islamist groups in Syria to the State Department, where today a spokeswoman tried to play down direct talks as old news.
We've been engaging with the broad section for a long time. It's been ongoing. Of course, we are incredibly concerned about the terrorist threat in Syria, about extremist elements within the opposition. We've made that very clear. That's why we talk to the opposition all the time.
As first reported by the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. and Gulf nations are engaging with Islamist groups in an effort to strengthen those who are not directly linked or formally affiliated with the al-Qaeda franchises in Syria. While these groups, including the newly formed Islamic Front, which released this propaganda video in late November, are not members of al-Qaeda, they still fly the black flag and support the establishment of a caliphate or Islamic State within Syria, which runs counter to democratic principles. As for the Syrian President Assad, who's agreed to send a delegation to January peace talks in Geneva, Switzerland, Defense Department officials say the administration is trying to build support for the conference and trying to determine whether the U.S. can partner with Islamists.
It's worth knowing whether these groups have any intent whatsoever to be moderate and inclusive, or whether they are from the start intend to be radical.
If this is all going to come to some kind of a diplomatic solution, then all parties involved are going to have to be represented some way.
But critics say the direct talks are more confirmation that the administration knows al-Qaeda is gaining ground in Syria because the groups are better funded, better armed, and battle-hardened. Independent analysts, including Jane's Defense in Britain, have reported that nearly half of the rebel fighters are now aligned with hardline groups or the jihadist cause. Brett.
Catherine, thank you. More on this with the panel. Just seconds ago, as Casey Stiegel was wrapping up his report, the Associated Press, the AP, reported that a Mexican nuclear official said the stolen container of radioactive material has been found empty. We will continue to follow this story and bring any updates that we can. Afghan President Hamid Karzai says he will not allow anyone in his government to sign a new security pact with the United States. Karzai was reacting to Secretary of State John Kerry's statement that Afghanistan's defense minister could sign it instead. Karzai is so far refusing to agree to a new troop arrangement with the U.S. Ukraine's prime minister is accusing political opponents of provoking violence in the aftermath of a major policy switch. Thousands have protested since the government backed out of an economic pact with the European Union in favor of closer relations with Russia. Some of the demonstrators have been beaten and arrested. Vice President Joe Biden was in Beijing today, meeting with China's new president amid a ratcheting up of tensions in the region that has seen not only the usual inflammatory words, but even the deployment of U.S. warplanes. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen brings us that story.
In 5.5 hours of talks that U.S. officials said were marked by casual candor, Chinese President Xi Jinping told Vice President Biden their two countries must build a new model for relations in order to deal with a world that Xi warned is, quote, not tranquil.
Regional hotspot issues keep popping up, and there are more pronounced global challenges, such as climate change and energy security.
Among those regional hotspot issues is China's declaration last month that it controls the airspace over a huge swath of the East China Sea. The U.S. promptly flew B-52 bombers in the zone, but her regional allies, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, remain on edge as a territorial dispute over mostly barren islands has now escalated sky high. White House officials said Biden reaffirmed that the U.S. does not recognize the air defense zone.
The new model of great power relationship envisioned in the 21st century between China and the United States requires us to expand our practical cooperation and deliver results.
President Obama has met with Xi twice since the latter took office 1 year ago, part of a much ballyhooed pivot to Asia by the White House and State Department. In the effort to contain the Iranian and North Korean nuclear programs, the U.S. has gained some limited cooperation from Beijing. But by most accounts, China over the last 5 years has only grown bolder in its serial commission of human rights abuses, currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, territorial aggression, and cyber warfare.
So you think that China's, in some cases, and correct me if I'm wrong with the wording, is somehow looking for a fight here?
I think Xi Jinping is taking actions that will inevitably lead to that. I don't think he wants a war because he would rather prevail without fighting, but he's doing things that are inevitably pushing the region to that.
China scholars are divided over whether Xi Jinping has managed to consolidate his control over the Communist Party and China's national security apparatus. Those who believe that he hasn't yet managed to do so attribute China's recent bellicosity to Xi's desire to win over the hardliners in his own ranks. Brett.
Okay, James, thank you. Back here at home, listening in to the beginning of what would become one of the worst school shootings in the nation's history. Recordings of the 911 calls from last year's Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting show dispatchers calmly assuring callers that help is coming.
Showdown 911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Operators urge the people inside the school to take cover as they reach out to town officials and state police for help. The audio was released today under court order after a legal fight by the Associated Press. 20-year-old Adam Lanza murdered 20 children, 6 educators, and his mother before killing himself. Up next, is the Obamacare website a hacker's paradise? But first, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. KTTV in Los Angeles with the latest on the car crash that killed actor Paul Walker. Autopsy results say he was killed by the combined effects of the impact and subsequent fire. Investigators are still trying to determine what caused that car to careen out of control. WSVN in Miami with nearly 4 dozen pilot whales stranded in shallow water in a remote area of Florida's Everglades National Park. 10 have already died. Workers are trying to coax the remaining whales back into deeper water. And this is a live look at Eden Prairie, Minnesota from Fox 9. The big story there tonight is the storm that has spread about 2 feet of snow in northeastern Minnesota. Heavy snow and ice have contributed to hundreds of traffic accidents around that state and were cited in at least 4 fatal crashes since Monday. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.